In that moment, memories from his past life surged up in Sal's mind. He recalled how Andrea would treat his wounds immediately, seeing her as his closest friend. With an extraordinary magical talent surpassing her peers, they'd even fought side by side on that battlefield. He was pulled from his thoughts by young Andrea's voice, clarifying his name and thanking him. A blush touched his face as he thought how cute she was, even at 5. He chuckled, telling her there was no need to thank him. Any gentleman would have done the same, and she could just call him by his name. Turning to the pool, he asked if she knew a way to reach the bottom without touching the water. Since he'd found her, he felt everything would work out. Andrea, lowering her voice, whispered that she, too, had sensed strange magic in the pool. She explained that although it healed any wounds once touched, nothing else could heal him as effectively again. Sal frowned, realizing it might be another way the Cooper family controlled their shadows, forcing them to rely on the spring for healing. Andrea smiled and grabbed his hand, saying she knew a way down without touching the water. She jumped, waving her hand and casting a spell, cloaking them both in a transparent magical shield she called duck magic. Amused, Sal asked what she meant, and she explained, laughing, that it made people like ducks their feathers would stay dry, even underwater. He smiled wryly, thinking how, even as a child, she gave such whimsical names to spells. Just then, guards burst into the room, ready to arrest Sal for the earlier killing. With no time to waste, he grabbed Andrea's hand, diving into the water with her before the guards could reach them. He followed the underwater current, which he hoped would lead to the spring's depths. Andrea tried to warn him, but the whirlpool sucked them down before she could say anything. They eventually landed in a hidden cave. Andrea stirred and woke him, and he took out a key, explaining it was a precious item that would open the door to the Zakuto, but there seemed to be no door here. Andrea wondered if the door should be summoned, surprising him with her suggestion. When he handed her the key, she invoked her magic, asking it to lead them to its owner. A glowing magic circle appeared, and suddenly, carnivorous plants began crawling toward them from the cave walls. Sal quickly grabbed Andrea, dodging the plants as a portal resembling the plants' open mouths formed before them. Andrea had passed out from exertion, so he cast invisibility magic over her, spell she'd once taught him, and thought she would be safe here while he faced what lay ahead. Passing through the portal, he found himself in a ghastly scene, a mountain of female corpses, a grim revelation about the true purpose of the Springs of Eden. At the top of the corpse mound stood a monster holding the body of a young girl. He turned, sensing Sal's presence, and greeted him with a twisted smile. Sal realized this place was not only for healing, but had been used by the Cooper family for darker purposes. The monster approached, sniffing the air, and sneered, "I smell an S-level talent." Sal recoiled, reaching for his weapon and wondering how the creature could know this. The monster waved his hand, summoning a bloody sword, and sneered, "So, you're the infamous Alan Cooper, the child blessed with high talent at birth. Although you don't look like a spoiler." With a wicked grin, he rushed forward, swinging his blade. "Or are you just a bastard daring to claim the inheritance?" The bloody blade made Sal's weapon, formerly a simple needle, now transformed. Sal gritted his teeth and held firm, feeling the immense weight of his opponent's power. He spat defiantly, "I'm here for more than a sword. I'm here to end you." The monster laughed, pleased. "Bold words from my descendant," he taunted, slashing with tremendous force. "But you're too arrogant." He pressed Sal back, his attacks growing fiercer as they clashed in a deadly dance around the cavern. Blow after blow collided, and finally, a brutal strike tore into Sal's side, sending him to the floor, blood spilling from his wound. The monster crouched beside him, smirking as he tossed his sword over his shoulder. "Still too weak," he mocked, but his smirk faltered when he saw Sal's wound beginning to heal. "Is this a gift from the griffin? That bird recognized you, did she?" he muttered, a hint of unease slipping into his voice. Sal realized that Brad had sacrificed most of his power to seal his soul and his sword. His fingers tightened on his weapon. Summoning his strength, he rose, swirling magic around him as a golden cross formed behind his opponent. Arrows of light pierced the monster's limbs, pinning him to the cross. The creature cried out, "Is this the blood magic binding technique?" "You've been dead for a long time," Sal said coldly. "A lot has changed. There are secret techniques now to counter blood magic." Channeling power into his blade, he dashed toward the immobilized monster, who, seeing the blade's approach, begged, Don't do this." At the last second, Sal diverted his strike with a grin. The monster gasped, then threw his head back in manic laughter, mocking him. "You thought you could scare me. I haven't had this much fun in ages." Then his voice turned cold, but playtime's over. Using blood magic, he summoned spirits from the ground, his bloody servants surging forward. "Strength and talent alone aren't enough to claim my sword," he sneered. The spirits lunged at Sal. He fought them off, realizing he can use blood to create these spirits. He didn't notice the enemy behind him until he felt a sharp blow to his back. Struggling to fend off the spirits' relentless attacks, he raised his hand, using a sacred defense technique to create a barrier. But the monster only sneered, pressing his finger to the barrier and shattering it. He grabbed Sal by the neck, lifting him off the ground. "When a cat plays with a mouse," he said with a dark grin, "it always eats it in the end." Sal struggled as his air supply dwindled, feeling his strength slip away. The monster drew him closer, inhaling deeply. "Your aura ... so familiar," he mused. "It's like one of my concubines, perhaps your mother." Horrified, Sal's vision blurred as the creature opened its mouth wide, preparing to devour him. Memories flooded Sal's mind, his mother gently stroking his shoulder, whispering to him as he drifted to sleep. "Sleep well, my dear baby. I'll be nearby, watching over you." Another memory surfaced Sal, a young child, running down a flower-strewn path, clutching a bouquet. "Mom," he'd shouted, only to trip and fall. She knelt, cradling him. "Forgive me," she'd said softly. "I have to leave now." He'd stretched out his hand, tears streaming down his face, crying, "Mom." In his memories, taunts echoed children throwing stones, sneering, "Your mother didn't want you. You're just an ugly, useless monster." Sal clutched his head, screaming out, "No." "She couldn't have abandoned me." The monster's laugh echoed around him. Brad's face appeared before Sal, his mouth gaping. Recognizing him, Sal kicked him away, screaming that Brad had killed his mother. Sal's blade plunged into Brad's chest, blood enveloping it. Brad screamed, shocked by the blood-sucking magic, asking how a simple boy could wield such power. Thrown back, Brad thought bitterly that this little idiot would burn all his own blood before managing to kill him. Brad clutched his chest, realizing he drained too much power from the blood spirits and needed to feed on more victims to regain his strength. Sal taunted Brad, asking if the bodies tasted good. With intense rage, he plunged his blade into Brad's body, demanding, "Was my mother tasty?" The blade pierced Brad's chest, and suddenly, an image of Sal's mother crying appeared, broken by the strike. She whispered Sal's name, and he paused, whispering, "Mom." His grip tightened on the sword, which pierced straight through Brad's head. Realizing he was outmatched, Brad tried bargaining, pleading with Sal to spare him, promising to merge with Sal's sword and become a spiritual weapon that would enhance Sal's power. Sal responded coldly that Brad wasn't worthy. A bloody explosion erupted from Brad, splashing blood across Sal and forming a bright, bloody sphere. Sal saw his reflection in the blood pool, where his mother's image gently appeared, assuring him that he was no monster and that she would always be there with him. A scream sounded from behind. Sal turned to see Andrea, frightened, asking if he was okay and offering to heal his wounds. Sal, still covered in blood, looked at her in confusion. Andrea, placing her hands on his cheeks, began to heal him. In that moment, Sal remembered that Andrea became his concubine in his past life. Hugging her tightly, he vowed that in his life he wouldn't let anyone harm her. Reflecting on blood-sucking magic, Sal knew it required a sacrifice of his own blood along with the holy sword strength. He would need to offer his blood to the sword and then burn it to fully unlock the weapon's enhanced powers. After the demon, who was the spirit of the sword brat, disappeared, chaos erupted in the Cooper family. All the guardians of the Eden Springs were sentenced to death, and those who had witnessed Sal's rage dared not mistreat Andrea any longer. Even a god's head was severed for his disrespect. Elsewhere, Hera frowned, thinking over rumors that Sal Cooper had stolen a spiritual sword from the springs. However, with insufficient evidence, Alan's mother could only continue her plots: imprisonment, blood sampling, poisoning, but Sal remained unharmed through the years. Years later, at the Cooper family's training ground, a boy lay sprawled on the ground, struck down, begging for mercy. "Of course not, Sir Alan. You are magnificent," he stammered. Hugh Isaac, head of the Isaac family, smiled approvingly, remarking that Alan's talent was indeed remarkable. Duke Leon Cooper thanked him with a nod, but then a sudden shout interrupted their conversation. They all turned to see Sal approaching with a confident stride. At the sight of him, one of the guards shouted, "Attack!" Sal raised his sword and muttered, "Shadow Blade." With a powerful swing, he knocked back the guards, impressing Hugh Isaac, who murmured in shock that while most children Sal's age were still iron sword adepts, Sal was already at the silver sword defender level. Watching from the side, Alan clenched his fist, seething with jealousy. How dare Sal steal his spotlight? Pointing his sword at Sal, he challenged him to a duel. Sal smirked, thinking that if Alan had stolen his talent in his life as he did in the previous one, he'd be far stronger. Aloud, he answered, "Good." As voices urged Alan on, he launched an attack, thinking that he would defeat Sal quickly. However, Sal blocked his strike effortlessly, drawing admiration from onlookers. Alan grew increasingly frustrated, unable to understand why his so-called unmatched power couldn't overwhelm Sal. Enraged, he thrust his sword forward, but Sal dodged with ease and delivered a swift blow, striking Alan in the eye. Alan's scream echoed as guards rushed to his side, crying out in horror, "Lord Alan." Hugh Isaac let out a laugh, mocking Alan's weakness. Leon Cooper, scowling, dismissed Hugh's arrogance and hinted that perhaps Alan wasn't as worthy as his reputation suggested. A tense moment passed between the two families, with Leon assuring Hugh that the arranged marriage with Alan's sister might have been a blessing to the Isaac family, a statement that prompted Hugh to leave, reminding Leon of their upcoming joint mission. Once alone, Leon turned to a nearby maid and asked about Sal's identity. Bowing her head, she answered, "His name is Sal, my lord, the son of one of your concubines, a bastard." Leon stared thoughtfully at Sal, noting his exceptional skill with the sword, and ordered the maid to bring Sal to his study. When Sal arrived and bowed, Leon eyed him carefully, wondering if Sal was hiding his true talent to eventually compete for the family inheritance. Dismissing his notion as paranoia, Leon assigned Sal a mission: to lead the 10th Squad of Shadows to the Lost Crystal City with the Isaac family to retrieve dragon eggs. Leon presented Sal with a sword, explaining that it would activate a teleportation formation in the Crystal City. Sal observed the sword thoughtfully, considering the dangers. Retrieving a dragon egg would almost certainly provoke a dragon, making the mission perilous. Realizing this was likely a test, Sal smirked internally at the challenge. Bowing respectfully, he agreed, but then raised his gaze, saying, "However, my lord, I have a request." Leon Cooper asked request with a murderous eye. After a while, the shadows traveled down the road with Sal riding a griffin at the front. Sitting behind him, Andrea asked nervously, "Sal, didn't you tell the head of the family I'd accompany you only as a servant?" "It feels strange sitting like this the whole way," Sal reassured her, turning to the others. "No one minds, right?" Reno and Lucian nodded quickly, their voices filled with nervous laughter. Soon, they reached the stone pedestal and someone asked, "Is this the Crystal City? Where are the crystals or the dragon's nest?" Just then, Gloria Isaac, Alan's fiancée and sister to the Isaac family head, stamped her foot in exasperation, remarking how funny that the elite squad of the Cooper family knows so little about this place. Someone shot back, "Hey, was she calling stupid?" Gloria extended her hand towards Sal, introducing herself. "You're Sal Cooper, right? You can call me Gloria." Sal turned to Andrea and Mio, patting Mio on the shoulder. "Andrea, you and Mio stay here." "I'll be back soon," Gloria shouted in annoyance, frustrated that Sal didn't even glance at her. She pursued him, calling out, "Sal Cooper, I'm talking to you." He finally turned, replying, "Lady Gloria, if we don't activate the portal before sunset, this whole trip will be for nothing." Gloria stared, briefly lost in thought, recalling how she'd once asked him to train with her. Sal's expression hardened. He remembered how noisy she could be. He gripped his sword and hoped the stupid bird accompanying him would fulfill its task. Meanwhile, confusion rippled through the group as the altar began to glow. "Is this a teleportation formation?" someone whispered. Sal and Gloria stopped in the center of the pedestal as energy crackled around them. Gloria remarked, "So, this is the Crystal City. It's beautiful. And somewhere here, the legendary dragon egg is hidden." A knight beside her silently vowed to seize the opportunity, aiming to betray the Cooper family and claim the dragon egg for the Isaacs. But Sal sensed the change in atmosphere and braced himself. The knight swung his sword with a smug expression, expecting glory when he returned. Sal waved his hand, calling out for everyone to run. Just then, a blinding explosion raised a dust cloud as spirits guardians of the Crystal City materialized. A knight screamed in terror, covering his head, while Gloria cursed the cowardice around her, swinging her weapon with a fierce slash thorns. Her voice thundered as she scolded the knight for his selfishness. The knight stammered, insisting his actions were for their family's good, but Gloria snapped, accusing him of self-interest. Just then, more spirits appeared, surrounding Gloria. Sal quickly unleashed a burst of energy from his sword, stunning her with its power. Raising his sword, Sal commanded, "Shadows, prepare for battle." His team surged forward with a roar, sinking their swords into the ground as threads of energy ensnared their spirits. Sal smirked, challenging their strength. He swung his sword, sending a powerful wave that drove back the spirits. Knights watched in awe, recognizing the legendary Cooper family technique, a blend of sword skill and magic. Gloria, taken aback, felt a blush rise to her cheeks, impressed by Sal's power. As they continued through the city, Sal spotted a red crystal. He seized it, absorbing its power and feeling his abilities rise from a silver blade guard to a golden sword master. Sal then placed the crystal into a special socket, but suddenly the ground quaked beneath them. As Shadow cried out, "Earthquake! No, the altar is collapsing." The earth shook as a stone slab began descending, carrying Sal and the others down. Sal grinned as they descended, "So, This is the dragon's lair. The stone slab lowered down, revealing dragon eggs nestled in a bright liquid. Lucian approached the eggs, exclaiming, "Great." "I didn't even think there were so many of them." Reno ran forward, responding, "Now we won't have to share anything, right?" The knight ordered them to put the eggs back with displeasure, while Sal watched the guys who touched the eggs and thought, "What idiots so eager to become dinner for the dragon." At that moment, the huge dragon woke up, and the guards screamed in fear. "What's going on?" The demonic dragon had woke up. Gloria grabbed her sword, shouting for them not to run, but to fight. Sal frowned, saying that once they were done, they would take the dragon egg with them. Suddenly, a plate flew up next to the shadows, freezing them in fear. Someone screamed, "What's going on?" Gray stood on the plate, turning the crystal. The shadow asked Gray what he was doing. Gray imagined Leon's face, who had said they needed to use other shadows as bait for the dragon, and once they got the egg, to get out and destroy the formation so the Isaac family's minions couldn't escape. As for Sal, he could fend for himself. Gray replied, "Forgive me, friends, but only one family in the entire empire has the right to own a dragon egg, and that is the Cooper family. Let them sacrifice themselves for the good of the family while he delivers this egg to them." The shadows discontentedly ordered him to return immediately. Gloria and Sal rushed forward, with Gloria shouting about the cruelty of the head of their family not just to them, but also to his own people. Sal replied that it was expected. Gloria asked, "If so, then why did you come to certain death?" Sal ran forward and answered, "You're thinking too much." The huge dragon opened its mouth and released a stream of fire. Sal jumped forward, cutting off the dragon's wing and shouting that he couldn't die there. He dodged and rushed forward, but the dragon swung its huge paw, sending him crashing into the wall. Gloria rushed towards him, stretching out her hand and screaming, "Sal!" He fell into the ground, and she used the Moonblade defense against the dragon's energy flow. Sal emerged and squeezed the hilt of his sword. Gloria reflected the dragon's attack and asked, "What were you talking about?" "Are you okay?" Sal stuck his sword into the ground and answered, "Everything's fine. Hold it off, and I'll attack its heart." He frowned, saying only she could handle this. Embarrassed, Gloria replied, "Okay," rushing forward and thinking she couldn't let this guy underestimate her. Sal grinned and looked ahead. Gloria struck the dragon and jumped back, screaming, "Sal, attack now." She turned around, asking why he was just standing there. Gloria began to strike again, thinking in horror that he must have hit so hard that he couldn't attack. At this rate, they would all die there. She realized there was only one way out. Swinging her sword, she closed her eyes, screaming, "Destructive dance of the blade." Her blows rained down on the dragon's body, making it roll loudly. The dragon fell to the floor, and Gloria asked in surprise, "Did it work?" Reno and Lucian approached the dragon's huge muzzle, kicking it. Lucian screamed, "Feel its power, stupid dragon." Gloria said happily, "It worked." Suddenly, the dragon opened its eyes, glaring at the shadows. It began to roar, and Lucian screamed in fear. "This is bad. The dragon is furious. Quickly, seek shelter." Gloria asked in fear, "How so?" At that moment, Sal stood up, straightening his shirt. He squeezed the hilt of his sword, holding it out in front of him. The third technique of the sword legacy, he thought, frowning. The attack of the bloody shadows. The dragon was covered in bloodstreams, as Sal thought. The third skill inherited from a sword. He raised it up, shouting, "Blood shadow attack." His bloody images appeared next to him, and he ordered them to gather. Lucian asked puzzled, "Did Sal just turn the dragon's blood into his clones?" Reno clenched his fists, asking, "That's not all." Didn't you notice what his sacred sword turned into? The knight asked, puzzled, is this real blood magic? Gloria looked carefully, answering, that's right, but it is forbidden's magic. Only the head of the Cooper family has the right to use it on the battlefield. She frowned, thinking she had heard that Brad Cooper's spirit disappeared. Could this be Sal's doing? Gloria got angry, shouting, wait, did he not do anything on purpose? He was just waiting for her to beat the blood out of the dragon. Sal Cooper, he's a little idiot, how dare he use it? The protagonist ran forward at that moment, asking, so what? He swung his sword, thinking of how, in his past life, he was used as they wanted, as if he were trash. But in this one, he would not sit back and meekly wait for his death. The dragon opened its mouth in terror, facing Sal's bloody Shadow's attack. Sal cut off the dragon's head, and it fell heavily to the ground. Gloria screamed, not bad, the demonic dragon, finally. But suddenly, Sal pulled out a blade and ordered everyone not to come near. Gloria looked at him in confusion as Sal clutched his face, exclaiming in horror. A chilling voice echoed from a pool of Bloodbrad's voice, taunting him. Did you think you could live peacefully after killing me? You'll become just like me. You'll need to absorb much blood and flesh for your survival. The group froze in shock. Brad pointed at Gloria, sneering, come on, little mouse. Here's your prey, enjoy it. Sal felt a dark fury building inside him. He pushed off the ground, yelling, more blood. Lucian screamed, this is bad. He's used blood magic too much and has become a demon. Run. Just then, Andrea appeared before Sal, stretching out her hand and softly calling his name. Sal stumbled and fell, sinking as though into water, with Andrea following after him. Moments later, he opened his eyes, finding Andrea leaning over him, calling his name and asking him to wake up. Sal asked, Andrea. She replied with relief, hooray. You're finally awake. She explained that she used a purification spell, stopping the demonic transformation, and that they had all made it out safely. Standing up, she revealed a dragon egg. Look, Sal, it's the last whole egg. Gray stood behind her, sighing with relief. Andrea reassured Sal that she hadn't told the Isaac family about the egg, and the red-haired girl had already left, so there was nothing to worry about. Sal thanked Andrea, saying, now I can rest easy. He gripped his sword, thinking that he initially planned to save Andrea from the Cooper family, intending for Mio to fake her death so she could escape. Swinging his sword, he muttered, that useless bird couldn't even handle a simple task, let it be. Mio replied quietly, explaining she had nothing to do with the situation, but was deeply worried for him. Andrea raised her arms in front of Mio, saying, Sal, let's discuss this calmly. No need to overreact, but Sal, irritated, grumbled, let's see who's in charge here. Reno stepped in, calling Sal Cooper. Sal turned, grinning, as Reno and Lucian held their sword hilts and approached with determination. Kneeling, they implored, Mr. Cooper, please forgive our past rudeness. If not for you, we'd have perished in their forgotten ruins, abandoned by even our own families. From now on, we are yours to command until death, and even beyond. Sal looked at them, stunned by their loyalty. Andrea then screamed, Sal, look, the dragon egg. Turning, Sal watched in awe as the egg cracked and a small dragon emerged. Andrea exclaimed, a demon dragon is hatching. Sal raised his head, declaring, the dragon will only submit to the strongest. So, little one, do you want to be with me? The baby dragon approached him, purring as it brushed against his hand. Reno clenched his fist in joy, shouting, great, even the dragon is on our side now. Suddenly, a voice boomed in the distance, congratulating Sal for taming the dragon. The little dragon rose into the sky, silhouetted against the setting sun. The voice echoed, "Today, the rebel squad of South Koopa is born." Elsewhere in the castle, Alan and his mother Hira sat on a large sofa. Alan asked, "Mother, when are we going horseback riding?" Hira replied, "As soon as your father finishes his work." But their peace was shattered as Leon slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "What's the point? All he does is amuse himself. He's no better than that fool South Koopa who not only killed a dragon, but tamed it as well." Hira responded with a dismissive wave. It wasn't Alan's fault. Why blame him? Had he been there instead of Sal, he would have done just as well. Alan frowned. Yes, of course. Hira, irritated, rose and took Alan by the hand, saying, "Forget it. Come, Alan, today it'll be just the two of us riding." As they prepared to leave, Hira covered her face with a fan, asking Doug, "How's the magic deprivation research progressing?" Doug assured her, "No need to worry, my lady. The research has been completed. All that remains is to find an S-level test subject to finalize the spell's functionality, after which we'll use it on South Koopa." Hira's eyes narrowed with satisfaction, saying, "Not bad. This time, we'll finally be rid of him."